So I got this Land Rover in the garage. It's been in here all day. It's getting brakes all the way around, so pads and rotors. And as you can see, I knocked out the front already. It's got the new pads, new rotors on it. And I knocked out the rear left. The only side I didn't do is the rear right side, and that's because it needs a seal on the differential. It was puking its guts out, so I already went ahead and got that done. You can see there goes the seal right there, and I'll show you guys some pictures of what it used to look like and what it looks like now. But now that all of that is set, we got the new seal in it, and the CV shaft is back in place. It's time to top off the differential, but these cars don't have a drain plug, which is, I mean, it's just stupid. I hate stupid designs like this. So this is going to be the fill plug right here. I already went ahead and removed it, and sure, you can see that this seal on this side is also leaking a little bit, but that's nothing compared to how this side was. So the owner wants to take care of the large leak, and that's just a minor leak at this point. So what I'm going to do is, since there's no way of draining this thing, I'm gonna grab my vacuum pump and I'll put it in there, and we're gonna try to suck out whatever we can. Of course, you're not gonna get all of it, though, because of this design. You're never gonna get all the fluid out. So the best you could do is get out whatever you could, and then just top it off with brand new fluid. All right, so there we have it. I'm sucking out whatever I can at the moment. It's just about done. My vacuum pump here is making noises. Please stop, no more. Have some decency. So once this finishes completely, I'll go ahead and top it off with the new fluid. All right, it doesn't seem like I'm picking up anymore. I'm actually done for tonight. I'm not gonna worry about the brakes on this wheel for tonight. It's late, so I'll come out here, do the brakes on that side, and this truck is all done. So it's now the next day, and I'm all done with the brakes here on the rear right side. So that means I'm done with all of it. I'm gonna go ahead, pop on the wheel, and take it out for a test drive, make sure everything's fine. But that'll be it for this piece of crap Land Rover. The brakes feel great. The pedal feels nice and smooth. I don't feel any vibrations or anything coming through the pedal or the steering wheel, so everything's good. But this is the second test drive, because the first one I was hearing like grinding coming from the rear end, and of course it was the backing plate behind the drums rubbing on the inside of the rotor, and there's no access to it from anywhere besides taking the whole thing back apart. So it's what I had to do. I took apart the rear left side, and of course the backing plate was rubbing on the inside where the brake shoes go. So I just went ahead and got that fixed, and it's completely smooth now, nice and quiet. And that'll be it. I'm gonna go ahead and park this, and the owner can come pick it up. I am in the garage with this, what I believe is a 2002 Toyota Camry. It has just over 100,000 miles on it, and it's here for a transmission fluid change, as well as the transmission filter and the pan gasket. So you can see we got all our stuff here. As you can see, I already removed the filter. Here goes the original pan, and all the fluid has been drained out of it, obviously. So I got a sample of the fluid that came out of it, and that looks straight up just like engine oil. That's how black it is. I'm going to assume this is the original trans fluid. I don't know if it's ever been serviced, but this is what the trans fluid should look like. And the owner did supply original Toyota trans fluid, so that's nice. This is not just regular trans fluid from AutoZone or something like that. We have new quarts of Toyota fluid, so that's great. And I just put this in here because I want to show you guys the difference. Okay, so the kit that he bought came with the new filter as well as the gasket, and it also came with a brand new crush washer for the drain bolt. The problem with this is this crush washer is way too small. It doesn't fit the drain bolt for this car. That inner diameter just isn't gonna fit for that bolt. Trust me, I tried already. So I had no choice but to put the original crush washer back on it. It doesn't look like this thing's ever been serviced before, so that crush washer that was on there looks to be like the original Toyota factory one, and it's only been torqued down once is what I'm assuming. So the crush washer looked like it had plenty of life on it. It wasn't flattened out or anything like that. But thankfully, the gasket itself looks like it matches up to the pan. The new filter looks like it matches up to the old filter. And yeah, You know, all this stuff right here is normal, so don't be alarmed. You're always going to see stuff like this when you pull out a filter, especially at 100,000 miles. So here goes the filter material actually inside of there, and this is what the new one looks like. And I still have to clean these off, but these are 2 magnets inside of here, and their job is to collect metal debris that might be floating around inside the transmission. So the magnet is here to collect all this stuff, and I haven't touched it yet, so look at this. Oh, that's pretty thick. That's a lot thicker than I expected. I was like, oh, it looks like there's just a little bit on the surface, right? No. Still, 100,000 miles. This is nothing crazy. I don't see any big giant chunks in here. Basically, this thing was just due for service. Yeah, that's a lot of... Let's look at this one. Okay. So it's a little bit more than what I was expecting, but at 100,000 miles and assuming this pan has never been off, never been serviced, yeah, I kind of expected to see that. So let's go ahead and clean all this stuff up. We got to clean off those magnets and put them right back in their place. And at this point, it's just a bunch of cleaning right now. Now, as far as the filter, whenever you're removing the old one, you got to make sure it comes with the O-ring. You can see that O-ring right there. And here goes the new one so you can get a better look at it. So just make sure that old O-ring comes off and it's not stuck on the bottom of the transmission. Now, I went ahead and cleaned this up. You can see it looks halfway decent. Now it's time to get this gasket off of here, but this thing is completely brittle and hardened, and it's coming off in pieces. It's like breaking instead of coming off as one piece. Yeah, this is gonna be fun trying to get this off of here. Now, when the owner told me he wanted to do this, my first thought was, let's replace the pan. Let's not deal with any of this stuff. But I looked online, and it's actually quite difficult to find a pan for this car. So I didn't even bring it up to him. You know, I'm sure he would have thrown it in his cart if they were just available pretty easily, but that doesn't seem to be the case here. I'm gonna keep working with this. If it gives me any more trouble, I may pull out the heat gun, and who knows, that might soften up the rubber with the heat and help it come off a little bit easier. But as of right now, it's kind of putting up a fight. As you can see, I got the pan all cleaned up. All that's nice and pretty. Got the 2 magnets put back in place. And around the edges right here, right where it's going to seal on the actual gasket, I had to use this 3M roll-lock disc. This is made for aluminum, so it's not aggressive at all. And of course, this is a steel pan, so it was perfect. You know, it's not going to remove any of the metal material. We just wanted to remove the gasket material. For some reason, the old gasket material, it was almost like embedded into the metal. Like there was no way in heck you were getting this out. If you tried to go at this thing with a scraper, you were just gonna gouge up the metal and you'd have leaks for sure. So with this real soft brush, it doesn't damage any of the metal, but it got off all of the embedded gasket material. And as you can see, that turned out real nice. So the new gasket doesn't want to sit flat. Obviously, it just came out of a box, right? So I'm actually using this right here. It's a new thing I picked up not too long ago. So this is my first time actually trying this, and it's working pretty well. Can't complain. As you can see, I just put some on the bottom side to hold it against the pan, and it's staying relatively flat all the way across. And for this car, I had to drop the subframe just a little bit to get access to these rear bolts over here in order to get the pan off of the car. So that means this pan has to go on the car at an angle. You got to kind of like swoop it in. So it's absolutely critical that this gasket stays in place, and this thing seems to be doing the job. So it stinks like hell, but it's working. I'm gonna go ahead and let this sit, and let's grab the new filter and we'll pop this on in the meantime. And in case anyone is wondering, yes, I did put new trans fluid on the new O-ring, so while it's going in, it doesn't roll over and cause any type of issues. Okay, so I am making progress here. As you can see, the pan is in place. All the bolts are on it. Everything is torqued down. And I went ahead and cleaned all the way around the pan just to make sure we don't get any false positives if we were to develop a leak. We want to be able to distinguish what was there, what wasn't there. So that's why I went ahead and cleaned around the pan and made sure it's completely dry. I've already gone ahead and dumped in 3 quarts of ATF. As you can see, they're empty. So at this point, those 3 quarts is more than enough to go above the level of that gasket, because it's a really small pan on this transmission. So with those 3 quarts, it's been about 10 minutes already, and there isn't a single drip of ATF coming out that pan. So that's really good. It's what I like to see. But I have no intentions of wrapping this job up tonight. It's about 9:30 p.m. so this car isn't going anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just leave those 3 quarts in the transmission, let it sit overnight, and tomorrow morning we'll check on that pan. If there's absolutely no drips coming out that pan by tomorrow morning, then this thing is good to go. We could go ahead and top it off completely with the rest of the ATF and get this job all buttoned up. But so far so good. It's kind of nerve-wracking when you do a big job and you put everything back together, and the moment of truth is dumping that fluid in to see if you have a leak or not. And just so we don't miss any potential leak overnight, let's go ahead and put this white towel down, or paper, napkin, I don't know what you want to call this thing, tampon. So grab this. We're gonna set it right under the transmission pan. That looks pretty good to me. There goes the pan right there. So if there is a leak overnight, we won't miss it. So it's now the next day, and great, it started snowing. Yay. Let's go check on this Toyota. Fingers crossed. Would you look at that? Would you look at that? That's what I like to see. Not a single drip all night. So now we are safe to pretty much top off the ATF, make sure it's in the right or the correct range, and start bolting up the subframe, make sure everything's nice and tight. This thing may have to go in for a wheel alignment, because when the subframe dropped, you could just tell that the subframe kind of shifted a little bit. Let me go ahead and button all of this stuff up. So far, really good, really happy with this. So the car's been running for some time. I even took it out for a test drive around the block a few times. You can see we got snow that's melting on the car. So after topping off the fluid, you can see I'll put it right there in the video. We are just a hair past the full mark with the engine and the transmission completely hot. So that's where I want to leave it. Looks good to me. And that's it. We're going to go ahead and button this up. I checked underneath the car, and again, still no leaks, no drips, nothing. So this thing's pretty much all set and ready to go. So here goes my attachment for my air hammer to remove screws off of rotors. Now last time I welded this thing together, but I only put 4 little tacks on here, and it ended up breaking the tacks from the collar to the shaft right here. Now there's 2 possible things that could have caused that. Number 1 is the skimpy little 4 tacks I put on there just wasn't enough, and it couldn't take the abuse of all the vibrations that goes on here. Or number 2 is this collar was actually welded about a 1/4 inch down, so it was actually like right here. And now if I push it all the way in until the tool bottoms out, you see that gap that I now have? Well, you can imagine if the collar was a 1/4 inch down, that means this tool, when it bottoms out, it's actually resting on that collar. So while you're using it, the air hammer is actually beating on the collar the whole time. So no surprise that the 4 little tacks failed, right? So I figured, you know what, let me go ahead and re-weld everything. But I'm going to try to kill 2 birds with 1 stone here. So with the tool completely bottomed out in here, you can see now we have a gap. The air hammer is no longer going to be hitting on the collar directly. And I welded all the way around it. Instead of just little tacks, it has a full bead all the way around. So hopefully this solves my problem and I don't have this issue again with the welds breaking. Looks like it's going to be promising. Today we have a 09 Chevy Equinox. It's here for front brakes. And do you guys see all the glitter everywhere? And no, it's not a vampire. Look at the front brakes. Look at the inboard side of the brakes. And if you look closely, you can see there is no pad back there. So the piston itself on the caliper is just riding up against the rotor. I mean, this is this is people getting their money's worth out of their brakes at an extreme. It's crazy because drops it off last night and says if I could have it done by 1 p.m. today. Keep in mind, I don't normally start working on cars till about noon. So I told him, no, it's not going to happen. I'll let you know when it's done, and that's it. Clearly, this was a ongoing issue. You knew these brakes were bad a long time ago, and you just kept on driving to the point where the inside pad has disintegrated and fallen out, and it's just your piston rubbing on the rotor. I'm not concerned with trying to flip this car around this fast to get it back to you if you didn't care to take care of the brakes on time. So whatever, let's go ahead and take care of this, and it should be all set after this. I don't really see any major problems, and sure, you could argue that the caliper should get replaced, and I can agree with that, but I can tell you right now it's not going to happen. So the face of the piston was a little bit chewed up, but not the worst I've seen. I did have trouble trying to get the piston to go in because you could figure it was almost fully extended. A little bit more and this piston would have completely came out. These people would have lost their brakes altogether. But I did have a hard time trying to get the piston to go back in. So what I was doing was applying some light even pressure with this brake caliper tool, and then with my hammer just start lightly tapping around the caliper and even right here on the side of the piston as I kept applying pressure, and it eventually popped in and I don't see any leaks. So it looks good, and now it's going in nice and smooth. So I managed to kind of save this caliper and let it be used for a little bit longer, but ideally you would want to replace this thing. But it is going to work for the time being. And I don't know if I pointed this out before, but look at that rotor. Look how thin it is on the inside. So that gives you an idea of how long they were driving with these brakes grinding like this. Look at that. That's why the brake pad fell out. Isn't that crazy? I mean, I hear a little squeal on my car and I'm like, well, we got to look at this, see what's going on. And people hear full on grinding and they just keep driving. It blows my mind. So I'm just about done here on the front right side. As you can see, mostly everything is put back together except the caliper itself. Now the bracket, there was just way too much rust on it. You were not going to be able to fit the new pads on here with the amount of rust on here. So I had to put the bracket itself in a sandblaster, got that all cleaned up, and it came out really nice. You can see the pads now move freely, just as they should. No issues at all. Now, unfortunately, they did buy me like the cheapest parts ever, so we did not get a hardware kit. I had to reuse the old stuff. I just cleaned it up as best as I could, and that's about it. So put the original hardware kit back on it, which I'm not a fan of, but what are you gonna do? As far as the slide pins, of course, they were seized and locked in place, so I had to work with all that. And now, as you can see, all the crap that was inside there is all cleaned up. Everything is re-greased, and everything moves freely, just how it should. In and out, spins around. So this is looking good on this side. Let me go ahead and button it up, and then we'll just repeat the same thing on the front left side. Yeah, I can tell this car belongs to a woman. She got that bling bling all over the place, so much that she even wanted it on her suspension. That's why she let her brakes grind away. You saw the sparkliness over there, can't deny it. Get it right here on the belt buckle. Look at that. Definitely fancy showing up to Walmart like this. Look at that. She got the boots with the fur. Just a quick side note, on the front left side here, the brakes weren't in any better condition. Alright guys, so I was wrong saying it's a 2009, it's actually a 2010. Anyway, so you can see the traction and ABS lights are on, so I decided to check the codes, and we have a problem with the left rear speed sensor. The other three wheels are responding, except for the left rear, just a flat line at pretty much 0 miles per hour. So I decided to come down here and see if I could see something. And yeah, I really don't know what's going on here. I don't know if just like a bad wheel bearing or a damaged wire harness. But one thing I did notice is, guys, look at this. This whole frame is just like rotted away. See that craziness? Look at that. That's just completely has holes in it. Crazy. All the way through. The car is 11 years old. That is not old in my opinion. That's crazy. Anyway, I'm not gonna worry about that. You know, it came in just for the front brakes. If they want me to dig into this left rear speed sensor, they'll have to pay me for that. But let's check it out for this test drive finally.